Welcome to AI Applied. Jaden had to quickly switch his screen because he's been obsessed with the mega heat dome that's going to hit his area of North Carolina. But we are not here to talk about mega heat domes or how what's going to destroy the environment more. We're here to talk about something actually that we started on our last podcast, Jaden. I just want to kind of I hope you remember this because I want to kind of like try to pick up if we can remember this thread of conversation. But essentially, Jaden sort of like talks a lot about like how he in his company AIbox.ai, which is a phenomenal company. You sort of get to use all different models next to each other. It starts at as low as $8.99 a month, which is absolutely amazing. But it's how I compare. How does Claude answer compared to Gemini, et cetera, et cetera. It's super useful. But point is, Jaden has a software company. And what Jaden is talking about is like he's like, I'm not even like using chat as much as I used to. What I'm using are these tools, like call it, you're going to talk about this, Jaden, I'm hoping, but I didn't really prep you too much for this, but just you had sort of like talked about Codex. You talked about the new features of Codex. You talked about Claude Code. You talked about cowork, et cetera. And I just kind of want to kick it off with just a thought sort of like on all this, which is that there was just a study done of, I guess it was by OpenAI researchers, but it's inside OpenAI. They are now using, and this is across every function, they're using Codex, which is the agent essentially, over the chatbot, which I was really stunned by because that is, and they're kind of calling it a canary in a coal mine. Hey, this is the future of work, which I don't totally agree with in the near term. In fact, I got kind of mad at Ethan Mollick, who I love, for saying the era of the chatbot is over. I absolutely do not believe that, and the study even shows that because 87% of companies are not using these tools at all. That's totally fine. The point here is that inside OpenAI, when you have a company with a perfect ecosystem where everybody gets essentially like free tokens and everybody essentially sort of like is incentivized to use Codex and everybody's taught. And in the same way, if you work for a company where everybody kind of like eats healthy and is healthy, that's actually going to help you and everything like that. The amazing thing to me is that you really can, in this perfect environment, use Codex, essentially kind of these tools like Claude Code, things like that, more than the chatbot. And what I was kind of hearing from Jaden, I'll turn this over to Jaden to sort of like let him talk about this. But Jaden, where I want to kind of steer you, if that's okay, is first of all talking about like when you start to make the shift. Obviously, you're still doing knowledge work. So obviously, like it's not just hey, do this and this and this, which Cowork and Claude and Code and Codex are all great with. You also have to sort of like use it to think. So can I just kind of toss it over to you to talk about like how you're using agents more and more in a you're not a developer. So like, how do you actually use it? Because I'm always dying to hear more examples of this.
Yeah, well, I think part of what I was talking about is like I almost never go to, unless it's like a very basic thing. Like sometimes I'm like, right, I just the thing I've been doing since day one for like years, and I still go to ChatGPT, and it's honestly probably habit because like if you look at how many times I've messaged this like custom GPT, it's probably like 1,000. But it
Mm-hmm.
like if I copy and paste like the title of my podcast and I give it to ChatGPT and I'm like, write a description for this, because you have to do
Sure.
that for every podcast. And it's like in this episode they talk about blah blah blah, blah and it's like 2 sentences. That is the only thing I ever use ChatGPT for, basically. Although they do have their new finance feature, and I am going to give it all of my financial information. That's a whole nother. That should be a whole nother episode. But I don't ever use these chatbots to basically talk with them anymore. The only thing I'm using now is Cowork and Code. And by the way, it's interesting because Code, I was like, oh shoot, like that's basically only for coding stuff. It's actually starting to be difficult to differentiate between Claude, Cowork, and Code because they keep giving all of them the same features. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
so Code, I like you can just go to Code and say like, hey, I mean, you could just talk to it like ChatGPT or like normal Claude, and it will give you the answer. So it talks that way. But then you're like, hey, okay, go fix my website or go update my app or go download this thing. If you're doing more of like files on your on your desktop on your computer, and you're moving stuff around and you're working with like Chrome and stuff, which by the way, Claude Code can do that as well. Like it can like go and like it has a Chrome connection, so it basically they can kind of do all the same stuff. But for a lot of that, I will use Cowork. I don't go and like in the past I was like, hey, ChatGPT, give me an answer to this, and so like maybe sometimes I'll do that, but 90% of the time nowadays I'm like, hey, I'm working on a project where I need to go download like 1,000 files, and I need to go and like reach out to like 100 people, and like these are the people I need to reach out to, and this is how I want to reach out to them, and like this is the software that I use for my email blasts, and this is what I use for my
Mm-hmm.
newsletter. I'll explain the whole project and I'll just tell it to do the project. Like in the past, I would have been like, hey, I'm making a newsletter. Take this paragraph and rewrite it in a better way that I can put in my newsletter. Like that's what I used to do with ChatGPT or Claude. Today, I'm saying, hey, I'm doing a newsletter. I need you to go and research the top 10 stories in this industry, rewrite them to be like this format, and I'll copy and paste like the format of what I've done for my past one, make it look perfect, go grab images, pull them in, go grab tweets, pull them in, put and output this whole thing in a HTML file that I can copy and paste, or better yet, just go copy and paste this into my newsletter platform and like set up the newsletter. Let me know when there's a draft I can go and review. That is what I use like Claude for nowadays. That's what I use ChatGPT for. I just tell it the entire project and tell it to go do the entire project. If it gets stuck, it might stop and ask me a question, whatever, that's fine. But like, I'm not chatting with it anymore. I'm telling it to do things, and
Well,
then
let
I
me
walk
okay. So
away to the next
let me
project.
let me jump in to get some clarification on this because I this is what I find so interesting, right? And everybody's work is very different. Like in our work, at AI Minds, it's a ton of conceptual stuff. There's a lot of stuff to do, but it's less that and more like we're building out frameworks, paradigms, like we do a lot of teaching, obviously. And so, one of the things that I sort of like sometimes just default to Claude over like Cowork or Chatbots. I don't use OpenAI that much, but I want you to talk about what you're finding with Codex because it was very cool. Is like a lot of it is just like a long, long, long conversation. And then, by the way, we use like Claude Design. I'm obsessed with Claude Design, which is just sort of like just building out websites, things like that. I don't tend to use Claude Code as much because it's more expensive. It's sort of like it's a very heavy tool for what I'm doing most of the time. Usually I'm either in Claude Design or something like this. And then when we actually want to create something, Robert, my guy Robert Haslam or I will sort of like then put it through Claude Code, which really makes sure it's working well and all that kind of stuff. But I guess just for the folks who are still like, I don't know, what am I using agents for? You've just defined some very specific things. But Jaeden, you must also have in your work, especially with like AI Box and you have a million other projects going on, times where you're just like, hey, what's the best way to do this? How should I think about this? Like really as if you and I, or you and sort of like a thought partner were sitting together. That's not you demanding your kind of co-CEO go do this work for you. Like, what about those moments where you just need to sort of like really hammer out ideas and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I still will 100% do that in cowork because I basically say, hey, I have like a sponsorship deal where XYZ company wants to sponsor my podcast based off of where they're at and where I'm at. And like all my analytics go to my website and scrape them from like my show and like go look at what they're paying and what other people in the industry are doing. Go gather that all up and give me like a breakdown of what I should, pitch them. It goes, does it all, gives me my breakdown of what I should pitch them. And I'm like, fantastic. Go turn this into a nice editable PDF, upload it, make a draft in my Gmail, attach to the person, and let me know when I could go review it.
Yep.
So I still do
Yep.
everything in cowork because like I ask it the question, but I'm not asking it a question mostly just to put more knowledge in my brain. I'm
Right.
asking it a
Right.
question because I'm about to do a task, and then I just
Mm-hmm.
go tell it to do the task for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's
No, that
usually
makes
how.
sense. Yeah. And I love that. So yeah, I think that is the sort of like the behavioral shift that's going to kind of like start coming with this. And obviously like, that, we're obsessed with behavioral shift and everything else, but agent behavioral shift is actually, I think, quite different from just chatbot behavioral stuff, which is fascinating to me. But I want to sort of like get into Codex because you were telling me about a feature and guys, it's going to drive me crazy. I'll look it up, but there was a software that did this. But do you want to talk about something that you were saying that was kind of like flying a little bit under the radar with Codex, which
Yeah.
is essentially kind of like functions. Does Codex, I don't use Codex. Does Codex function more like Coworker? I mean, I know it functions like code.
It's
Does it also function like Codex? Does it take over your screen or Coworker rather?
I think I tested it out maybe like 3 months ago and it wasn't there where Claude was. So I've just been running with Claude. But based off of
Okay.
a
I'm
lot
gonna
of the
do
demos
something.
I've been
Teach.
seeing, I think I'm going to get back into. So right now I have 2 Claude Max subscriptions, the $200 a month ones. And
Yeah.
I use them all up like frequently because I have a lot of projects. And I know everyone's like, token maxing's dumb. Okay, I'm not token maxing. I legitimately have like insane projects. Like
We
whatever.
know, we're not
So
accusing you. My gosh, yeah.
so stop the token maxing accusations. The people on LinkedIn really get triggered when I say that. But I have two. I'm going to drop one of my Claude Max subscriptions and switch it for the $200 OpenAI subscription, which I have not done in 6 months. Maybe, yeah, it's been at least 6 months since I was like hardcore on OpenAI. And the reason is because they have come up with an absolutely incredible feature, which is called record and replay, where basically they'll allow Codex to like watch your screen while you go do a task and then it will make an MD file document. It's kind of like on Claude, you call them skills, right? Where it knows how to do
Yeah.
something. It will make an MD file document where it can repeat that same skill. I actually love this because there's a lot of tasks that I do where, I've been talking on here about like something I'll do, and I kind of hate having to explain in like, brutal detail every little element of the task and hope Claude can figure it out. Lots of times it can, and I use voice to text because there's no way I'm typing out like some of my instructions because they're just long, right? Like I just talked for like 3 paragraphs on how to do something. But I would love to record my screen and let it know exactly how to do it. Now, the only caveat that I will say, that's if you have like a workflow or a task that's very repeatable, and that's actually how I feel like that's true to how OpenAI has done things for a long time. My only caveat on all of this that I've been pleasantly surprised with Claude on is if you don't do that, if you just do the big long description of how to do the task, it doesn't get it perfect every time. And there'll be a couple times in the middle where it'll be like, hey, I'm at this step and I'm unsure what to do here. What should I do? And you got to tell Claude. So recording your screen will eliminate that and it will make it super repeatable. So I think that's what's amazing. The only caveat though is Claude has pleasantly surprised me many times where I'll give a big description of how to do the thing and it will pick, like it'll do things that I wouldn't have expected in the middle. For example, I told it to edit a video on CapCut one time. It opened up the video on CapCut, started making the edits, was like, this is really hard. Closed CapCut, opened the video file that it was working on, edited the code, and then it was like, okay, your video's done being edited. Okay, that is not something I would have ever expected. I would have expected it to go and click the trim tool and on the video editor and cut the bit off that I didn't want. And when you do the record and replay with OpenAI, that's probably the outcome that you're going to get. It's going to be a little bit more expected, which in some cases I think is really good and it will get it done exactly the way you want. But sometimes I've been surprised by Claude doing it a way I didn't expect, but it did it good. But also there's like a quality issue where you got like a 10% of the time where it's like, oh no, it didn't do it right. So it's pretty cool though.
Yeah, it's very cool and a very cool idea. Jaeden, while you were talking there, I quickly looked up the company that I was thinking of. And it was like Tango, and we used to use this even years ago when I was at NYU. About like, it sort of like records mouse clicks, and then you can essentially just take this and say, hey, this is how this is done, and then you can sort of like share it with somebody else. But this is where I think the agentic world comes in just much more handy, where it's just like, hey, let me try to help you do what you're already doing, and the more that we can sort of like get closer to this idea that people don't have to sort of like try to define what they're doing. It's just like almost like watching you. And this is going to sound creepy to people, but I do think this is the future. Your agent's going to go just watch what you're doing and saying like, because right now with chatbots, it's like, hey, it sounds like, you want me to build this out, or you want me to, and sometimes that's helpful. But I think the big move with agents, and by the way, I really think we're very slow on agents. People are like, oh, everybody's using agents. If you're using agents all the time, friends, you are in a bubble. Like that is not how most of the world works right now. But I do love that if you can do this, you can really be ahead and start teaching others and just think about how it works. And I think agents are going to get closer and closer to sort of saying essentially, hey, listen, this is what you're doing. I'm just going to sort of like proactively do that like a great colleague would. I get excited about this. I also get excited the fact that, Jaeden, do I have this right? Have you had Clay on your 2-week-old or 3-week-old baby on your lap this whole time?
Yep, he's been snoozing. So he loves the podcast. I think he likes the sound of Conor's voice. It's very soothing, so it puts him to
Soothing.
sleep.
I'm doing the
And
NPR. Hey, listen, everybody. So just hey, listen, hey guys, if you've enjoyed our podcast, we're gonna ask you to leave a rating and review because it's a huge gift to us. We do this out of the kindness of our hearts because we love you guys. Just can't get enough of this podcast. Shout out to Clay. Shout out to Bouncing Jaeden. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Clay, stay asleep. We will talk to you all guys in the next episode.